Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Well, if you're following the 2024-2025 debate on the budget, you would have seen this afternoon the minister with responsibility for NIB, Alfred Sears, talk about that increase that's coming in just over 3 weeks, July 1st. Well, a lot has been said about the National Insurance Board fund and how much further it can go and where the fund stands today. And hopefully this evening we can really make all of that very clear to you so that you understand how that increase is going to look. I think it's going to be an increase of 1.5% every 2 years for the next 20 years and a lot. Well, I'm not the expert here, certainly by any stretch of the imagination. I'm happy to have some very senior executives of the National Insurance Board joining me this evening. First, welcome to the show, Dr. Tammy Francis. She is the Deputy Director of Operations at NIB, and a whole lot of other areas come under her portfolio. And also Trevor Bryce. He is a Senior Manager of Compliance at the National Insurance Board. Good evening to both of you and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I know that you all have been getting, I guess, emails, questions, calls, people just wondering. Let's just jump right in. We know that July 1st, the first sort of, I guess, installment of those increases will take effect. Let's just talk about that. How will that look? And also, why now?
Well, good evening, Bahamas, and good evening, Shanique, again. Just to a slight correction. Initially, we would have introduced to the public an increase that would have been for approximately 20 years. However, since that time, we are right now only increasing the contribution rate for the first 2 years. And there's actually a reason for this. We are now at the wake of a new actuarial review. And to give you an idea, every 5 years, the NIB fund, it is mandated that we review the sustainability of NIB with regards to being able to accommodate the payments for NIB, for the public. Now, what happened here is we are going to look at the experience for these first 2 years. Of course, we will have new recommendations from the 12th review. The recommendations that that the public would have seen with the 20 years to 2044, that would be a recommendation from right now the 11th actuarial review, the existing review. So what we are going to do is look at the additional options and have them work in tandem with this initial increase. What we are trying to ensure is that, of course, nobody wants an increase, right? Of course not. However, this increase is inevitable to help everyone understand. This is not a problem that is unique to the Bahamas. This is something that happens throughout the world with regards to Social Security institutions. So the Bahamas is no different. This is happening right now in the region. We are also looking at reform through other CARICOM countries, for example, St. Vincent. We have BVI, we have Trinidad, just to name a few. All of these countries right now are going through the same concerns that we are going through. The root problem is, especially for the Bahamas, right now our contribution income is rather strained. And what I mean by that is we are actually paying out more
than you're getting in.
Yes. So that right there is a recipe for
bankrupt, for lack of a better word, for the fund then being depleted.
Our reserves will be depleted,
yes.
And this is expected to happen in 2028. We are in 2024, and of course, we have to do something now, definitely.
So, and we will talk about compliance because that is where Mr. Bryce comes in. And certainly, of course, he has a task ahead of him because besides the increase, there's also the need to go out there and collect the monies that are just sitting, that are owed to NIB, some in the millions. And so we will talk about that. But let's just talk about where the fund is now, if you can, or just sort of a general figure, because we know that NIB stands up and really assists Bahamians when it counts, when it matters. We know of two major, just recent I guess, natural disasters that happened that no one could have predicted or prevented, and you all had to step up to try and assist Bahamians. Bahamians who before never even needed NIB or the assistance from NIB. But let's just talk about sort of how the benefits overall look. As a result of paying all of this out, where does the fund or the fund stand now?
So to give you a bit of history, since 2016, or prior to 2016, NIB has always been able to make its payments, its benefit payments, using the contribution income. As of 2016, we would have had some economic interruptions, as well as, I think it would have been Hurricane Matthew in our fourth quarter, that would have affected the contribution income into NIB. So since that time, we have been seeing and experiencing that deficit. Now, that deficit has actually grown. Unfortunately, as you alluded to, we ran into 2019, Hurricane Dorian. 2020, the world could never have anticipated COVID-19. So NIB would have risen to the occasion and would have provided funding to individuals for regards to the unemployment benefit, but to help to narrow down and I think to give people an appreciation of what is happening. Let's say, for instance, if we did not increase the contribution rate, the 1.5% that is in the next few weeks, that we are expecting in the next few weeks, NIB, between its contribution income and its benefit expenditure, we would have a deficit of about $65 million. With this upcoming increase of the 1.5%, that deficit, we are able to cut that down to as low as, well, it's still a deficit, but it's more palatable to about $38 million. So the key is we are moving in the right direction, and which is why we wanted to look at the experience as opposed to going all the way out to the 20 years.
And people can digest that a little bit easier. I mean, it's good that you're going to depend on what the new actuarial report says in order to move forward. But people, you know, that 20 year initially was like a huge goal, you know. And so certainly, of course, so the first increase is July 1st, and then the year after.
The increase, the 1.5%, is actually going to occur July 1st, 2024.
Right.
And then, as I said, you will not see another increase. You will not see us coming with another increase until we would have had a chance to review the new recommendations from the 12th actuarial review.
Okay.
So I'm sure Mr. Bryce will take some time this evening to walk you through some of the initiatives that we are doing. You alluded to NIB collecting those arrears that may be out there. So, you know, we have a dynamic compliance team that is actually working towards ensuring that any arrears or any funding out there that we need to collect with regards to being able to accommodate our benefit expenditure is there, you know.
Mr. Bryce, if you were to put a figure, a dollar amount on the amount of arrears, and a general ballpark figure that's outstanding for NIB, what would that be or look like?
So currently our estimated arrears would be around $36 million.
Could go quite nicely into bringing down further that deficit. But tell us about what's being done, because I know several people in NIB, some of whom work in compliance, and they really go hard to be able to get what's owed to NIB on the books of NIB. What's sort of the new thrust to be able to collect that $30+ million?
Okay, so currently at NIB, we have a number of initiatives, compliance initiatives that we're engaged in. One of those initiatives is to have more inspectors on the ground, because the inspectors serve as the compliance officers for the board. And so currently we have a training going on where we'll have some additional inspectors at the end of that training. And so it will then create more presence in the various areas, New Providence and in the Family Islands as well. Also, we are currently engaged in more compliance activities with the other government agencies as well. The in the Department of Inland Revenue, Immigration Department, Port Department. We are connecting with them to address some of the gaps that we experience as an organization when we attempt to do it on our own. And in fact, just this week alone, we would have been we are a part of the Ministry of Finance voluntary business initiative, our compliance initiative, where we're providing opportunities for businesses to come to various places like the Mall and Marathon,
Right.
Also the Port Department, and on Carmichael, the Courtesy Building, to meet with various government agencies to address the compliance or arrears issues. And it provides an opportunity for the public in general to be able to address those, to kind of come to a one-stop shop and to address their compliance issues. And so what we found is that by working with these various government agencies, it allows us, it provides greater support, and where we are unable to...
And it plugs some of those holes, maybe.
Yes, yeah. And in some cases, there are holes that we may not even be aware of,
Right.
but by interacting with those other agencies, that has been very helpful to us in terms of our compliance initiatives.
Now, are there not sufficient or better trained, well-skilled inspectors and the lot? And I ask that because, one of the complaints is NIB is bloated as it is in terms of staff, et cetera. How do you respond to that in terms of, I guess, ensuring that it's not bloated to the point that hey, the pay is, the payroll is just a bit heavy?
Okay, so as it relates to the inspectors and the need for additional inspectors, throughout the course of the years, we tend to lose inspectors through various activities, retirements, promotions, or just they just move on to other agencies. And so there's always a need for us to replenish the amount of inspectors that we have. Because, for example, inspectors are assigned to a geographical area where they're responsible for inspecting and managing all of the companies that are in that geographical area. One inspector can have an area that can have 500 employees and self-employed persons. Another can have an area that has 1,500 employees and self-employed persons. And so it makes it difficult for us to be able to meet all of the needs in terms of engaging and meeting all of those self-employed persons and those businesses.
Right.
When you have that many entities that need to be visited by one person. So there's always a need to replenish the amount of inspectors that we have so that we can provide full coverage. And that coverage, like I would have indicated earlier, is not just New Providence. The focus is also on the Family Islands as well.
Yeah, which is quite needed.
Yes.
Before we talk about how this expanded, because I remember the minister when he spoke talked about the fact that it's going to be a sort of, I guess, enhanced programs offered or benefits, et cetera, that Bahamians should be aware of. Like this increase just isn't going to be an increase where business is as usual. It's going to be more where you can appreciate your NIB. Mm-hmm. But if you can explain the difference between, because come July 1st, there'll be an adjustment in the rates, obviously, and then also insurable wage. What is the difference and what is it we need to know about that?
Okay, so I'll take this one. Mm-hmm. Now, the difference between the insurable wage and the contribution rate. The contribution rate is a percentage that determines the amount of contributions you will actually pay. Now, the insurable wage ceiling, this is the amount of money that you will pay on into NIB. Now, what I mean by that is, since the inception of NIB in 1974, we would have had only one contribution rate increase. We would have started with a contribution rate of 8.8%, where the employee would have paid 3.4 and the employer paying 5.4. Now, since that time, if individuals can recall, in 2010, we would have increased the contribution by only 1%. Now, the key to this is this was actually not injection into our income that would cause the fund to expand. This was actually a contribution rate increase to accommodate the payment of the unemployment benefit itself. So at this point now, we are now at the point of looking for a rate to help to sustain the fund and inject funds to ensure that the reserves are not depleted.
Right.
Now, with regards to the wage ceiling, and I would say that the contribution rate increase is going to affect everybody, all workers. Mm-hmm. Now, the wage ceiling, this is something a little bit different. Since the inception of NIB, the wage ceiling, we had a wage ceiling of $110 per week, meaning persons would have paid on $110. We had an increase, I think it was around 84, that increased to $250 per week. The last increase we would have had was in 2022. Right now, we have a ceiling of $740, and this is the amount that individuals pay on. So, for example, if you make $740, you will pay at what we call the ceiling. If you make $1,000, you will still only pay at $740. You got it?
Yeah.
So if you make $500, you will pay at $500. So that means that $740, that's your cap. So the difference is only those individuals who make $740 and moving along. While we have an increase in the contribution rate on July 1st, we also have an increase to the wage ceiling on July 1st. And that is going to move, yes, from $740 to $810. So you have some individuals who now will be paying a little bit more. And why we have these increases, we are mandated by law for every 2 years to increase our wage ceiling, as well as not only the wage ceiling, as well as our benefits. So we know salaries increase from time to time. So we want to, and we have to ensure that the payments that you and I make remains relevant to our salaries.
To the salaries, right.
Exactly. Right. So you have individuals right now, to give you an idea, those persons who are making minimum wage, when we increase this contribution rate, in June, you are paying per week $10.14. As of July, you are paying $12.09. That is a difference of $1.95. And I like to try to quantify it. That's a bottle of Coke soda. So one bottle of Coke soda per week, around there.
Perhaps the bottle of soda is even more.
Even more? Okay. So to give you, so those persons who are around the middle, about $500 a week, their difference would be from June to July, $3.75. I say that's what? That's a whole nut?
About.
Okay. And those who are right now at the ceiling of $740, it hasn't changed yet, $5.55. And I was trying to find something, what is that? That's less, that's a Starbucks coffee, maybe?
I don't even know, but these people, I'll tell you, NIB come officially on here because you're calling names that don't even sponsor the show, and so don't you ever give them that kind of attention, which that they don't need.
Coffee.
But
Coffee.
exactly,
Coffee.
and that's and that's tall, small, the small size. If you're lucky, if it's that. But so you're trying to say that the impact will be marginal. You won't necessarily even notice it. What this increase will involve.
Right. And what I think for those persons who may be higher paid, those are the ones who are going to move from that 740 and they will be at that 810 ceiling. So their increase would be about $8.81. So while it seems, not like I said, nobody wants an increase, but while it seems like, it's something that right now we do not want to have, understand that it is very necessary for sustainability. We want to ensure that, and I want to ensure that at the end of the day, when I retire, I want to ensure that something is there for me. We
all do, and I don't think Bahamians are opposed to what it is that the National Insurance Board finds itself having to do. They just simply want it explained.
Okay.
And speaking of explained, we talked about, of course, this increase that's coming, and some of it marginal, some of it a bit bigger, just based on your salary scale. But let's just talk about the programs that are going to accompany it. And first of all, maybe if we can start by talking about the benefits that already exist, that NIB, this is outside of emergency benefits, and where NIB steps up to assist the nation,
Right,
as it had to do in recent time. But what other benefits are there, and then what else is happening in terms that we should be aware of?
Well, first of all, I would say the primary mission of NIB is to ensure that there is income replacement. And this is where NIB is responsible for paying benefits and taking in contributions, right? Now, NIB in itself, we offer 3 different types of benefits. It's not only the retirement benefit, that may be the most popular one. Unemployment might be the most popular, those 2. But we have what is called our short-term benefits, and that includes your sickness, your maternity, funeral, unemployment. We also have industrial. Now, industrial, these are benefits that are paid to individuals who may have had an accident out of employment or some injury out of
on the
employment.
job, yeah.
Right. So these payments, these benefits are available to them. Now we also have our long-term benefits, and these are the ones that persons, they actually, more so know about, and these are the retirement benefit. You have the survivor's benefit. You have your invalidity benefit. A lot of times people call it the disability benefit, but yes, these are persons who may have not out of work, but they have some injury or some aspect that prevents them from being able to work, but their injury did not occur as of employment. So we have several benefits available, but one thing I think is very important, and persons, they somewhat smile sometimes when I say this, NIB is very, very generous. And let me clarify what I mean by that. Within the region, we have right now the 4th lowest contribution rate. But we pay 8 of the 9 benefits that any Social Security institution would be able to pay.
So you're more than meeting the demand,
Yes.
but taking in not what should be taken in.
Yes, we are there, we are relevant, we are available to persons to ensure that one thing, this like I said, is income replacement, but we are here to make sure that persons are able to sustain themselves, especially in the time of need. That's NIB.
And the thing is, many people had an issue with, for example, let's say during the hurricanes that you mentioned, the pandemic, that there were people who received payment and support, as you rightly used that word, but they never made a contribution. NIB also steps up there, because
Right.
a Bahamian in need is a Bahamian in need.
Yes, yes, we are responsible for, and that's one of the actually secondary purpose or mission of NIB, to ensure that assistances are paid to individuals in need. They may not have contributed to the fund, but we operate based on the spirit of solidarity. And what that means is the employed, they pay for the unemployed. The rich, they pay for the poor. The well, they pay for the sick. And the able, they pay for the disabled. So that solidarity, that spirit of solidarity is there. You have to ensure, even though we have income replacement, we still have to ensure that we are available to those persons who need. NIB is 2 different ways you can receive payments from NIB. And one is out of right, and the other is out of need. So we're not just willy-nilly giving NIB's funds away. Of course, these persons are main tested, meaning we go to your house, we help to determine whether or not what you're telling us is really so, and that you really need these funds,
Now, NIB, over the years, we're not sure how it's structured now, but certainly NIB has played its role in the growth, in the economy, certainly the infrastructure of the nation. Talk about how it's stepped up and perhaps still is assisting even with that, because people often say, if you look at some of the comments online, you're talking about things. You're talking about things, but those things are very important for quality of life and for, again, serving the Bahamian people. So talk about how NIB also plays a role in a different aspect in assisting with national growth.
So what I didn't speak about, another mission of NIB is to ensure health infrastructure is in place for the Bahamas. I know a lot of persons have some concerns, especially with us building buildings, or for instance, building the clinics. To give you an idea, so during the inception of NIB in 1974, we would have had a delay from our industrial branch in actually repealing workers' compensation, right? Now, what happened here is there were surplus funds sitting in the industrial branch. So NIB needed to know what to do with these funds. So they contracted the ILO, and the ILO recommended that we build clinics for the Bahamas.
So this just is one of the top of mind decision.
No. This is we sat down and we actually, this is what we have. What do we do with these funds? So here now, let's say years later, we're looking at around 23 plus clinics being built, not only through New Providence, but throughout the Bahamas, using those funds. Now, those funds were earmarked for health infrastructure, but here's what happened also with those funds. Maybe I don't think the public knows a lot of what we would have done with these funds.
Right.
Unemployment assistance. We did not start with the unemployment benefit program. We started with the unemployment assistance program, and this was around 2008, 2009. And this would have
Is that closely linked? Sort of looks the same, or how is it different?
One was the one we have now. We contribute to it. That one was non-contributory. So the funding for that, we used some of the funding from the same branch in order to provide funding for those individuals, and this was during the recession, those individuals who would have been unemployed. And the thing is, I said NIB is generous. These persons would have been unemployed for a period of over 5 years, that span. Also from that branch, persons we are aware of the National Prescription Drug Plan.
Yes.
The funding for that actually came from that particular branch. We started the drug plan with that particular, with funding from that branch. And I will tell you, the National Prescription Drug Plan, when we started day one, we started with 6,500 persons. Today, we now are at 40,000 individuals who are benefiting, meaning they are able to get their medication free. Those persons, I have gained a lot of grandparents from the drug plan, where individuals, they're like, for free? What this eliminated...
It certainly is helping out those who are retired and on fixed incomes, and making sure that they can go and access their medication. Now that is an amazing plan, and it's working well.
Yes. So this eliminated a lot of persons having to go to queue up very early in the morning to go to the hospital to get their medication, or those persons who would have recently retired, they would have had insurance and they are now not able to. $1,000 insurance, they're not able to accommodate that anymore. So, NIB, regardless of how you may feel about NIB, I think NIB is very relevant to many walks of life.
It absolutely still is. We know that there are social, whatever it's called, but let's say the U.S., you're more familiar with Social Security.
Yes.
Well, this is our Social Security, and it's necessary and it's important that we all pay it forward and we all pay into it, even for our futures, should we be as blessed. So the thing is, it's a fund that must continue, and the fact that NIB is so diverse and all the other things it does, as you heard this evening. Mr. Bryce, I want to talk about when businesses refuse. When you and your officers and your inspectors go out and you try and get those funds that are owed and come up with even agreements and say, listen, here's how you can pay this, but they refuse. You obviously then have to take it to prosecution.
Yes, yeah. So because payment of contribution is mandatory, so it's not optional. And so usually we work with employers as best as we can to get the records and to get the payments. And where they are not able to pay in full, then we would work with setting them up in payment plans. How
How effective is that? Or if you even have to go to prosecution, how effective has that been?
So the payment plan, we find that is effective. Our last resort is really taking the matter to court. But if it gets to that point where either they aren't able to enter into an installment agreement or refuse to, then we prepare a file for either failure to produce, failure to pay, or failure to register, and then that matter goes to court, where they have to then pay those arrears. Or even you might find that you might put someone in a payment plan, and they may default again. That also goes to court, and then where the judge then would have them enter into a payment plan with the legal department of the board.
So your best bet is to avoid all of that. Just agree to a payment plan. I want each of you, especially you, Dr. Tommy, to talk to the Bahamian people out there. Again, nobody is resisting this idea. They just want to be clued in and sort of like taken along. But just share with the people, and I hope you all come back as well, but why it's important for July 1st to happen and moving forward.
So July 1st, 2024 is very important. We need to act now. You know, there have been many years that we have been talking about this, and we actually did not put it in place. We want to ensure that at the end of the day, as I said earlier, those sickness payments, the unemployment payments, the retirement payments, all of those payments that you walk into NIB and you receive, we are able to commit and provide those payments to you. You are very important to us. The funding is very important to us, and without you, we are not able to do this. So we need your assistance, we need your help, we need to ensure that we know that the time to act is now. We need to ensure that you understand why we are acting now.
And Mr. Bryce, any wrap-up comments by you?
So we want to just say to both employers and employees to see this new rate increase as an investment in your future, because by being able to sustain the fund, it means that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you come to retire, funds will be there to take care of you and to provide some kind of income for you during those periods when you have less income coming in. And so the additional $1.95, $5.55, see it as you investing, and not only as an investment, but see it also as a good return on your investment as well. And so we encourage you to embrace the rate increase.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tammy Francis, Deputy Director of Operations at the National Insurance Board. Of course, Trevor Bryce, Senior Manager of Compliance here, building and really presenting to you, the Bahamian people, the reason behind the NIB increase July 1st. And of course, you understand, as you heard them say, that the 20-year first sort of idea has been pulled back because of the actuarial report that's going to take place shortly will determine exactly how NIB moves forward. And again, it must happen before 2028, is it? Yes. Because if not, then you're really facing some tough situations at that time if you don't move and act now. I thank you both very much for sitting here, explaining this, talking to us. Certainly, of course, we welcome you back here on Beyond the Headlines and really appreciate you coming this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. So happy to have you along and hang out all week long. Remember, it's Labor Day tomorrow. So certainly here on Beyond the Headlines, they're clapping. So we look forward to seeing you right back here on Monday. Meanwhile, for the entire team here at Beyond the Headlines, I'm Shanique Miller. Have a blessed holiday weekend, everyone.